How did Missouri forge a huge comeback against South Carolina? And how did they lose it at the end? Let's talk about all that and more right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso, and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball, recording from my lovely Airbnb here in Charleston, South Carolina. I was on location at the ball game yesterday. Had a great time, to be honest with you, despite the absolutely terrible ending for Missouri. It's kind of tough to complain after how Mizzou has done in one-score games lately. But I'm going to try to complain anyway, coming up here on the show. Before I start, I do want to say that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel, where you can start the season with a big return. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And I tell you, that may be Luther Burden's best play yet down there. That was right in front of the Missouri visitor section, by the way. We had a great look at it from our seats. We're going to talk about that later in the show, but really, we just kind of have to talk about what happened here. My gosh, the line, by the way, between ecstasy and heartbreak is just so thin in this sport. Well, first of all, you got to give Brady Cook a ton of credit, I think, for, gutting it out and playing good football, by the way, when he was obviously not 100%, or there wouldn't have been any question he was going to play regardless. I have to say, I was a little bit skeptical of the point spread being 13.5 when it looked like Cook was not going to play, simply because we look at the projections, the advanced stats, they were saying, maybe South Carolina by a field goal, something like that. I just didn't think the difference between Pine and Cook was necessarily that, but no doubt Brady Cook proved why he's the starting quarterback for Missouri yesterday. There's no doubt about that. But unfortunately, while the Tigers' offense, I think, performed as well as you could have possibly expected against a really good South Carolina defense, a Gamecock squad, easy for me to say, that is obviously trending in the right direction. So for Missouri to score 30 points in that game and lose is truly stunning to me. I'm really shocked. And really, you got to give a lot of credit to the Gamecocks as well. And I would say particularly Lenore Sellers, the Gamecocks quarterback. It felt like the Missouri... Well, first of all, the Missouri pass defense was simply not good enough yesterday. The Tigers had too many coverage busts, and that's been a common theme throughout the season. And Corey Batoon played a lot of zone defense in the first half yesterday that was not effective, similar to, I would say, the Texas A&M start a little bit. Well, the Tigers changed it up into some man coverage in the second half and did pretty well, did relatively well, but still, again, just too many big plays given up. Too many missed tackles, and, Lenore Sellers, again, you got to give him credit. The guy can really run. He's a big man. Him and Rocket Sanders, both tough guys to get on the ground, and you saw that on that last play, the winning touchdown by South Carolina as well. When you miss a tackle, when it's your team, you go, man, we should never miss a tackle. But when it's your guy who's breaking tackles, when it's Luther Burden who's breaking tackles, then we give him the credit. So it's kind of hard to suss all of that out. Corey Flagg had 14 tackles last week, I believe, against Oklahoma. I think Missouri played an extra linebacker versus an extra safety more. So some of, I think, the results there, it was schematically. Some of that was game plan. And what I mean by that is I think Missouri was content to try to force Lenore Sellers to beat them through the air. And guess what? He did. Ultimately threw for 350 yards, and he had some huge runs too, especially that big escape on 3rd and 10 in the fourth quarter when it looked like Johnny Walker had Sellers down for a sack, certainly had him within his grasp, and just couldn't bring him down. And there was just a couple of those moments that could have made all the difference in the ball game. Again, the line between ecstasy and heartbreak in this sport is just truly astonishing. Now, be honest, when the Tigers were trailing 21-6, how many of us felt like the game felt pretty much over? I'll raise my hand, to be sure, because it just felt like Missouri had gotten nothing done offensively. It felt like Missouri was outmatched at that point on both sides of the ball. We settled for a couple of field goals in scoring position. And just felt like that was kind of all she wrote. The Tigers were 0 for 5 on third down up until that point, but then suddenly the offense would come alive. But I have to say, these first halves of these SEC road games, the South Carolina game, A&M, Alabama, 56-6, the Tigers have been outscored in those true road games. So no touchdowns, just 2 field goals, the 2 field goals in Columbia, South Carolina yesterday. Just got to get off to better starts than that. You know, the thing with Eli Drinkwitz and his staff, I've said it before and I'll say it again, this team never gives up. And you saw that yesterday, even down 21-6 when things were looking rough. This team hung in there and played great. But at the same time, you'd like to see some better starts, right? You'd like to see some better starts, especially on the road. I'm not sure what the answer is there, but I think if you're Drinkwitz, you got to look in the mirror a little bit and say, what are we doing wrong? Are we doing something wrong in terms of preparation here on the road? Are we not starting as fast as we would like to for some reason? I don't know. I just think there's some opportunity for self-reflection there. And despite the loss, Luther Burden III and Theo Weiss, to me, looked every bit like, I think, the NFL future receivers that they are. Weiss may be a bit more controversial, but, well, Burden, obviously a first-round pick at this point. He showed why yesterday. Just one of the all-time great Missouri plays, period. You can say in a loss as well, and unfortunately, because Missouri, well, with 1:10 left, they couldn't get a stop. They gave up a touchdown and lost the game, but, well, it didn't have anything to do with the incredible play that Burden made. 4th down and 5 down the sidelines. Just a beautiful throw by Brady Cook, number one, and an even better catch by Luther Burden, who hauls it in with his left hand, again, right in front of the Missouri visiting section, where me and my wife and friends were sitting and we were just losing our minds. It was complete pandemonium at that point. I mean, the thing is, I think people will probably over the years will remember the 4th and 17 play conversion from Cook to Burden against Florida last season. Number one, because, well, we can see that 2023 is going to be the better season than 2024 at this point, and obviously a win versus a loss too. But to me, if you take out all that context, that's the best play of Luther Burden's career, maybe his entire life in football. It doesn't get much better than that. A 4th down, you got to have it, take the lead, and with a minute to go. Unfortunately, the defense just didn't quite hold up its end of the story there. Again, if you'd have told me that the Tigers were going to start Brady Cook and score 30 points, I just would have been astonished that we lost that football game. But that's what happened, and like I said, it's kind of hard to complain about Missouri at this point in close games. In the Tigers' last 23 games, by the way, we're 18-5. This is according to MIZ Chris18 on Twitter, by the way. Only losses to Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M, LSU, and South Carolina. Those are some pretty good programs. A Cotton Bowl title, sellout crowds every week. Go take care of business to the next 2 and go back to a bowl game and get that 10th win season. Keep it rolling, Eli. Hey, I totally agree with that. Missouri's in a great spot right now. And while this is going to be a slightly disappointing season, I would say, because clearly Missouri's not going to make the college football playoff. So I totally agree with this sentiment, by the way. 9-win seasons, 10 with a bowl. That's not exactly something to turn your nose up at if you're a Missouri fan. I understand that this season kind of became all about the playoff or bust, and while obviously we would have loved to have gotten there, I don't think we can say this is a bad season yet. Now, if Missouri drops the final 2 games to Mississippi State and Arkansas, then we're going to feel entirely differently about the season. So I really do believe that these last two games are really important, of course, for the current team. This team wants to win for themselves and the men sitting next to them in the locker room, but also for the future of this program as well. While it wasn't a college football playoff or bust season, there's still plenty that the Tigers can and have gotten out of this football season. So the idea that if you're a Missouri fan, you're ready to check out, I don't think most of us are, to be honest. I think a lot of Missouri fans still love this team or bought in. I know I am, so that's what I'm expecting from all of you Tiger faithful coming up here the rest of the season. I think we're gonna pack Faroe Field for that Arkansas game, and again, these last two games are really important for Missouri. Now is not the time to check out. And somehow, South Carolina won the ball game on a play that even the Kansas City Chiefs can't get to work for them. So let's talk about that coming up in just a second. But first, it's about FanDuel, because you got to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch during the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So in South Carolina, they scored that game-winning touchdown by Rocket Sanders on that little shovel pass. Well, I gotta say, my immediate thought was, I've been watching the Kansas City Chiefs run that play with Travis Kelce in the red zone for the last 5 years. And I don't think it's worked in the last 4 years, by the way. But of course, somehow they make it pop. But I will say, it was actually a good play call by South Carolina, because it was modified a little bit from how the Chiefs like to run that play, because usually you've got a player lined up essentially as a tight end, whether it is Travis Kelce, maybe it's a running back. They've run that to, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, for example, as well. And it seems like it never works. I don't know. It worked a few years ago. These days, usually not a successful play, but somehow, of course, the modified shovel pass. And again, it was basically what happened is the Gamecocks let Zion Young, the Missouri pass rusher, into the backfield, and right behind him, little shovel pass, missed tackle by Corey Flagg and maybe a couple other Missouri players as well. Again, Rocket Sanders, much like Lenora Sellers, a really tough guy to get on the ground, one of the absolute best running backs in the league for the past few seasons at Arkansas and now at South Carolina as well. So the problem there, what really bothered me, the fact that South Carolina scored on that particular play, is because before that, it really seemed like the Gamecocks were kind of content to kick a field goal and go to overtime. If Missouri makes a tackle there, let's say South Carolina's held to a 5-yard gain, I think the odds of them scoring a touchdown there on the next play or two are pretty darn low. So just another way, again, the thin line between ecstasy and heartbreak. You saw it right there once again. So I wanted to get Chris Marler of Locked On Gamecocks on the show this week, but, well, hate to say it, last Thursday I was too busy to even get out a show, so it didn't happen. My apologies there. But after the game, I thought Marler had a really good comment and a complimentary one about Brady Cook as well. He said one thing that will be lost in that win for South Carolina from a national standpoint is that Brady Cook is awesome. Just an incredible, gutsy performance. Couldn't agree more there. There's no doubt. Brady Cook, one of the toughest hombres out there. He may not look like it. You look at his face, he looks like a sweet young boy, doesn't he? But don't let it fool you. Luther Burden was right. Brady Cook is a dog. There is no question about that. And speaking of the dogs, well, the dogs up front were starting to win for Missouri in the running game in the second half. And I think Nate Noel has been a real difference maker this season. He's been by far the best Missouri running back. And when Noel and the line started winning in the second half, well, things got a lot easier for Brady Cook in the passing game as well. That's not a coincidence at all. When Brady Cook has a good running game, he's a different quarterback because suddenly the play action fake works better. The defensive line's not able to just take off and not worry about run fits. No, they can just attack Brady Cook and that questionable at times Missouri pass protection this season. So the fact that outside, particularly the outside zone running play that has been a bread and butter of Eli Drinkwitz's offense since he arrived in Columbia in 2020, the fact that Missouri got that play going in the second half, I really believe that that's what triggered the whole comeback in a way, because the Missouri offense was just stuck in the mud in the first half. Second half, we look like a pretty darn good unit. So I really think the running game kind of made all the difference. And last week after the Oklahoma game, there was a lot of talk when Missouri scored a touchdown, went up 7. There was a lot of talk, including on this program, if the Tigers should have gone 2 in order to make it 9, a 2-possession lead late in the game. Well, in this game, it was a little different. The Tigers were trailing by 9, 21-12 after scoring a touchdown. And they decided to go for 2 to make it a 7-point ball game. And I have to say, I usually agree with the advanced statistics crowd, just generally speaking. I don't always agree with them. But on this particular case, I think I do depart from the advanced stats crowd. It seems like their argument is, hey, if you're trailing by 9, go for 2 now. So that way, if you don't get the 2, you'll know what you have to do. You'll at least know that now, as opposed to later in the game when you might not be able to do anything about it. I completely understand that logic. I really do. I think it's all contextual though. I think it depends on the spot. I think it depends on how confident you are in your offense and your particular 2-point play that you're about to run. And of course, the defense that you're facing as well. In my opinion, I just thought in that spot, the Tigers should have gone for 1. The Tigers should have kicked the PAT, made it an 8-point ball game, make sure with his, obviously people can miss PATs. It's not 100%, but 99% sure you're going to make it a 1-possession game. And I do think momentum, especially when you've been mostly getting your butts beat for the whole game, hey, let's put a touchdown on the board, let's make it a 1-possession game. Subconsciously, I think that affects the other team as well. They're going, oh, it's a 1-possession game now versus a 2-possession game. Again, reasonable people can disagree with this. I totally understand the argument. I just didn't love it yesterday. Obviously, it's easy to say in retrospect when the Tigers don't make the 2-pointer, but I was saying it before they even went for it. That was just my feeling at the time. Be curious to hear what all of you thought. Not in retrospect, by the way, but what were you thinking when the Tigers were going for 2? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Don't play the results. Don't tell me you didn't like it because they didn't make it, because I didn't like it before they even lined up for it. And while the seats in the corner of William Bryce Stadium, the Missouri visitor section, it was great for atmosphere. Had a blast at the game. Wasn't necessarily the best for seeing absolutely everything, especially when questionable calls for Missouri were not exactly thrown up on the old replay monitor a whole lot in the stadium. So I will say it seemed like there were some really bizarre officiating moments in that game. Some I couldn't see as well as a lot of you did on television, of course. But there was one in particular that I've never seen in my entire life. One of the fishiest officiating moments I've ever seen in my life. Hey, the Tigers, we got away with it. But let's talk about that coming up. And also a little lesson that Brady Cook needs to learn moving forward. And we'll even talk a little Mizzou basketball here to close out the program. But first, I got to talk about Gametime, because if you're talking about last-minute tickets, Gametime is absolutely the place to be. And Gametime Picks, by the way, their new feature, you toggle it on, cuts out all the nonsense, just gets you right to exactly the best deals as fed to you by our friends at Gametime. So you know what? Just take the guesswork out of buying tickets and use Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. So like a lot of quarterbacks, Brady Cook could definitely learn something from Chase Daniel. But specifically in this case, Chase Daniel used to do something really, really smart that not enough quarterbacks, some have picked it up, but not enough quarterbacks have picked up on this. Back in the day when there would be a false start, a whistle of any kind after the ball had been snapped to Chase Daniel, well, what would he do with it? He would immediately just chuck it onto the ground. Why? So he doesn't get blasted, obviously, because sometimes defensive linemen or linebackers, well, they don't necessarily hear the whistle, or at least they pretend that they don't hear the whistle. Either way, they get away with taking huge shots on a non-play on your quarterback if you hold on to the ball. If you're not holding the ball, well, there's really no excuse at that point. I remember Brady Cook, I think it was in Tuscaloosa, maybe it was in College Station, but at one point, you know, there's a whistle, the ball's in Brady's hands, he just holds on to it, and the opposing lineman just absolutely blasts him after the whistle. I can't remember if that ended up being a penalty or not. Either way, you don't want your quarterback taking those types of shots just to hopefully draw a 15-yard penalty that may or may not come. So that's not just a Brady Cook thing, by the way. That's an every single quarterback in the country thing, even at the... This is something you should start doing in grade school if you play quarterback. There's a whistle, just throw the ball on the ground. Like, let them dive on it and think it's a fumble if they really want to. That's not your problem. You're the quarterback. You're just trying to protect yourself. And that's got to be one of your goals at all times, especially for a guy, Brady Cook. He's a tough customer. He's also had some injuries as well. Just protect yourself a little bit, Brady. That's all I'm saying. And yes, I still hear the cock call in my head. The still hearing that. I'm also still hearing Sandstorm being played over and over again in my head. And I have to say, a great atmosphere in the stadium for South Carolina. Around the stadium, well, maybe we could work on that a little bit. But the actual in-stadium atmosphere and everything, it was tremendous. It was really, really fun. Maybe add some more bathrooms as well. But other than that, I mean, it was a fabulous time in South Carolina. Sat there with some Mizzou alums and also a South Carolina alum as well. My buddy married a South Carolina girl, so we all sat together, had a good time. She's a really good sport. I want to hate her, but I can't. No, seriously. Love you, Martha. Love all you guys. Thanks for having me. And speaking of families, one thing that's fun about going to those Missouri road games, in my experience, is getting to see the players' families and interacting with them a little bit. As I was coming back from the lone bathroom in our corner of the stadium, I happened to see Zion Young's family. Obviously, they were wearing Young, number 9 on the back. I couldn't help myself. I go, hey, you're got to be Zion Young's family. They're oh, yeah. And I'm going, one of the great plays in Mizzou football history was made by your son, by your cousin, whoever he is. And we were having a lot of fun and reliving that moment. That was really cool. And late in the fourth quarter, I'm pretty sure Drake Heismeyer's dad, I just gave a big old high five to as well. Just a guy wearing 69 Heismeyer. Figured that was his dad. Maybe not. Either way, that was a beautiful high five. One of the greats of my entire life. And also, I will say, we got these tickets kind of indirectly through Eli Drinkwitz. He has absolutely no idea who I am. He has no idea that he got me tickets. But I will say this. After the game, Eli Drinkwitz, who, again, friend of a friend type of deal here, an NC State fan, who knew Drinkwitz when Drinkwitz was at NC State as their offensive coordinator. They were church friends, that type of connection. Well, Drinkwitz got us some tickets, and after the game, despite a really tough loss, Drinkwitz came out and talked to that guy and our friend of a friend there and his family, his sons, and, he didn't have to do that. He really didn't. So I thought, considering the circumstances, good on Eli Drinkwitz for doing that. I was proud to call him the Missouri coach in that moment. Nothing to do with football, just, hey, that told me he's got some pretty good character. It really did. Oh, and also I realized I have failed to pay off my teas here, so let's do it now. When it comes to, that bizarre call I was referring to, I really don't think I've ever seen this. There was that fourth down where it looked where they were giving it to South Carolina, going, oh yeah, first down, move the chains, without a measurement or anything, and Drinkwitz is going, no, go measure it, and they measure it, and he's a foot short. So it's a turnover on downs. I've never seen that before. Normally if it's that close, we don't just rely on the 65-year-old guy with cataracts to figure out that from 20 yards away, oh yeah, perfect, yep, move the chains. What was happening with the officiating last night? Really, you guys tell me. You had a better look at it at home. I'm going to go watch the game back probably at some point this afternoon, maybe on the plane ride home, that type of deal. So I'll get my looks at it as well. But was the officiating as bad as it seemed at times yesterday? Because that measurement moment was truly bizarre and something I don't think I've ever seen before. And finally, Missouri basketball with a 72-point win over Mississippi Valley State. It may say as much about Mississippi Valley State as it does Missouri, though anytime you're tying for the largest win in school history, this is Missouri's third 72-point win ever, apparently. Well, that's a good thing. You want to see the Tigers blow out their lower competition. So this was a good outcome for the Tigers. I don't know that it's predictive of anything whatsoever, but after a couple games that were maybe a little bit too comfortable in the non-con for the Tigers, and obviously a disappointing loss, this was a good outcome for Missouri. What was not a good outcome for Missouri, however, Davion Hannah ended up committing to Alabama here in the early signing period for basketball. And the reason I say this is bad is because Hannah, a sort of borderline, I would say McDonald's All-American, top 30 type of prospect, well, he would have really made the 2025 recruiting class, high school recruiting class at least for Missouri, look a lot better on paper. Now you're looking at Aaron Rowe, who's a good prospect, top 50 type player, and then a top 100 type player. Another player as well. This class, not going to blow anybody away, but really it's more this season's freshman class, the five-man group, is really going to hopefully set the foundation for the future of Dennis Gates' program here at Missouri. Obviously, the Tigers are going to continue to go through the portal, and I would say, based on everything I've read, it looks like the Tigers will be content to just have a two-man high school class this season and use the rest of their resources in the portal this offseason. So, with all that being said, thanks for joining me here on a bit of a different episode here in Charleston, South Carolina of Locked On Mizzou. Obviously a disappointing finish for the Tigers, a thrilling ball game. I have to say, when I woke up this morning, I was like, oh no, we really lost, didn't we? It didn't even totally hit me until I woke up this morning what just happened. So it was a good time in South Carolina. I wish we could have pulled it out, but you know what? I'll see you all next time in Columbia, Missouri, right here on Locked On Mizzou.